talking about this and finance. Okay, so so somebody wrote me a question about finance and another question about how to talk about this. They were saying that this is impossible to talk about, and they feel like a fraud every time they talk about it. Because there's nothing to say, there's nobody to liberate, there's just life happening perfectly. However, but also the talking of this is happening in exactly the same way. If the urge comes up to talk about it, just let it out. It's not that there's a you there to let it out, but it just comes out. And there's a sense of holding on, or an idea of how it should be talked about, or that this can't be talked about, shouldn't be talked about, or that it's not correct. It's another idea, in a way very subtle, that you're doing something. And so at the moment, currently, what's happening in your experience is the sensations coming up that I'm a fraud to talk about this, it's a fraud to talk about this, or it's not natural to talk about this. But that's another thought bubbling up. And then when talking about this happens, it's absolutely perfect. Absolutely. And it's as perfect as the person talking about getting drunk on Saturday night and pulling women. It's no different. It's just written in here that Lisa loves to talk about happiness. And it's never, ever going to be correct or true. Ever. And often when I say things and make statements, another thought pops up, but that's not quite true. And sometimes I then try and elaborate on that, or say it's not true, but it's just all the stuff that's coming up. And it is impossible to talk about. It's just a dance. And this is just the dance, the story of liberation. Which is another story, a divine story. I mean, they're all divine stories, but not that this one's any better than the other stories, but I love talking about liberation. I love all of this. To not suffer anymore. And it's talked about in time and space, which will never ever grasp it, because it's not about time and space. It's about oneness, it's about silence and stillness and nothing. And so the way it's put into words is through the dance of them, through contradictions. I remember in the story here, loving holding contradictions. You know, one teacher that said you have to sit and meditate and watch the mind, and another teacher says there's nothing to do and nobody there, and that this teacher's a load of rubbish. Whatever arises in the story is absolutely perfect. There is no way, there is no wrong way, there is just what happens. And so the thought comes up, apparently from listening to this teacher, the thought comes up, so now I need to meditate. Really, it's never happening in cause and effect, but we're just talking relatively. So you sit there and you meditate for 2 hours, and that's the story. And it's not that the meditation will lead to liberation or to the end of suffering, but liberation happens in an apparent story, to an apparent character. Ultimately, there is nobody here getting liberated. the character is seen through, but it happens in time and space for most people. For some people, you've never heard about this subject, and bang, it's just the end of the story, and it's all seen through. So it doesn't have to happen in time and space and through the apparent process, but it does for most. It did here. And so we talk about it, because that's what comes up.